From the old to the new, or is it the new to the old? Now, the Quest Transcontinental is leaving the station. We're taking a trip back 150 years to the moment railroads began carrying passengers from one end of America to the other. The Transcontinental Railroad was the first to connect the East and the West, completed today 150 years ago. The last golden spike was hammered down at Promontory Summit in Utah. Union Pacific was the company that made it happen. And Union Pacific is celebrating by sending this big boy locomotive on a whistle-stop journey along that historic route. I spoke to the chief executive of Union Pacific, Lance Fritz, at a party in Utah. He was at the party, not me. He offered his thoughts on the impact of 150 years of transcontinental rail travel.
Since the meeting of East and West by creating the Transcontinental Railroad, it's since only been compared to something like putting a man on the moon. You know, at that time, it was almost inconceivable that we could connect the country like that. Before the Transcontinental Railroad was in place, it took 6 months to go between New York and San Francisco. And when you took that journey, it took your hands in your life. And then after the Transcon opened up, that journey was about 10 days, and it was in relative luxury, relative comfort. It changed things like our diet. Foods became available that weren't before. And it also fulfilled another long-term vision of Abraham Lincoln's, and that was to connect Europe with Asia through an incredibly important trade route in the United States. It did all of that and more.
Today, rail accounts for a sizable part of the U.S. trade going back and forth. But I don't think people realize just how much goes by rail.
Yeah, Richard, about 40% of the inner-city freight in the United States goes by rail. We touch every aspect of the economy. The food you and I ate this morning very likely was transported via rail. The transportation we took, either the component parts or the vehicles themselves, were transported by rail. Our clothing, the furniture, the building material, and the buildings we're in, we touch every part of the economy.
You also can tell what's happening in the U.S. economy at the moment. If it's booming, you're moving things. If it's slowing down, you have empty freight cars. What have you got at the moment?
Yeah, we got a pretty good economy to work with right now, and you've got that exactly right. We worry about consumers consuming stuff, things. We think about the industrial economy and the health of the industrial economy, and we think about trade. If you just look backwards to the first quarter, GDP up 3.2%, that's a pretty darn good quarter. And it caps a year last year of 3% plus minus growth. So if we're at that kind of pace, that's very good for a freight railroad. It's very good for Union Pacific as we build America.